All right, folks, welcome to What Are the Odds with Barnes and Baris. I'm one half. That's right, Rich Baris, People's Pundit. Barnes is coming. There it is. We were waiting for a couple of things that we wanted to get and upload. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them, share them far and wide. Barnes will come on and tell you where to find them. But sportspicks.locals.com, sportspicks.locals.com. That is where you can find Robert. And of course, I'm right down here. We're all everywhere, but the best place to follow us both is on Locals. And mine is peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, Barnes is going to be here any minute. While we wait for Robert, I'll bring this up. And I'm going to probably bring this up anyway. That last week, I think it was Friday, somebody asked me a question during the Q&A about what would happen, or maybe it was a week before, but it was before the preemptive strike. And I got to tell you guys, look, I'm a vet. I joined after 9/11. I joined to fight terrorists in Afghanistan. I had, like so many others, to listen to nonsense surrounding Iraq, but you're a soldier and you don't really question what what you're told to do. Everybody I know voted for George W. Bush in 2004 while I was in the military. It is what it is. But it means I'm also part of that generation that got sold a lie and a scam. It was a complete con. He let Donald Rumsfeld run roughshod over his foreign policy. General Powell was pushed to the back. I mean, I'm no fan of his either, but why am I no fan of him, by the way? Because he turned out to be himself another lying piece of shit, just like everybody else. He went to the UN. He put on his little performative act. And people like me had full faith and trust in someone like General Powell. And he lied to us all. He lied to us. And then he hates Republicans because of what George Bush did to him and what the Bush administration did to him. Well, I don't know what to tell you. You put on your big boy pants every day when you put on that uniform. You can't stand up for yourself or the American public. It's the Republican Party's fault. You're a sellout. Anywho, instead of just letting George Tenet with a handful of, back then it was called Delta Force, and Green Berets running around Tora Bora, murdering everybody in their path, which would have done it. It would have answered all of our problems. It was working. Instead of doing that, the Bush administration allowed Rumsfeld to have his way, allowed the military-industrial complex to have their way. They turned what could have been a very short, maybe short as far as intensity of fighting, prolonged effort to be sure, to make sure that, we kept going. And I'm talking about assassinations of high-value targets. And forget about just the Taliban, forget about the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and you move on. The Taliban, they had opium exports in that country on lock. We did not have all this fentanyl coming from Afghanistan, all this opium coming from Afghanistan, Heron, before the invasion. All right, so we could have just ran around Tora Bora murdering everybody, murking everyone, and it would have worked just fine. But they let Rumsfeld override George Tenet, big old cigar like Robert, who's waiting in the queue. He's here. And George Tenet used to come in, and he had this big old cigar all the time. Matter of fact, let me just bring in Robert. He can hear the backstory. Why not? So, buddy, I was telling him about, that I'm from a generation where we were sold the lie. So I'm deeply skeptical of war now. Everybody my age is. I even joined the military to go and hunt me some Johnny Taliban, and that was a load of crap. They redirected everybody to Iraq, of course. And we didn't get Osama bin Laden until many years later, even after George Bush was out of office. We totally lost sight of the mission. George Tenet told Bush, we could just let me keep a little bit of it, because Delta, for those who don't know. When you're at the JFK Special Warfare Center, you're at Fort Bragg, you got Green Berets across on one side of the street. All right. And on the other side, there's a compound that technically is on is on the base, the Army's base, but it doesn't belong to the Army. It's a CIA compound. You're not allowed on it. It's Delta. And he said, yeah, I'll keep my Delta guys. You throw a few more Green Berets my way and I'll kill all of them. That's all. And he should have allowed it to happen because it was working, Robert. But Rumsfeld, old Rummy, comes in, turns it into a conventional war. He blows our peace dividend. They all do. They blow the peace dividend. All these bodies, and worse than the, perhaps even worse than the bodies, is a generation of just broken men that they have no way to take care of, right? Broken in the mind, broken in the soul, broken in the body. No, they didn't expect. That was like the first war a ton of people actually came back and survived with massive injuries, but to various parts of their body and inside that you can't see. And they had no way to take care of us. So there's and all these domestic problems arises from it. Myself, I'm a product of it myself. We all know the story. I mean, I could retell it again, but I didn't know what the hell to do. I spiraled out of control real quick. Okay. They didn't know what to do with me. They just stuffed me filled with drugs. By the way, drugs made from the same alkaloid that the Taliban didn't let get exported at 9,600 to 10,000 metric tons a year annually. It was less than 180 metric tons of opium that made its way out of Afghanistan while the Taliban was in charge before we invaded. That shit exploded. By the time we were leaving, it was 10,000 metric tons. So don't tell me we're over there doing nothing. Oh, Robert, the CIA just happens to miss it. Come on. They're doing the same stuff they did for Frank Lucas. Stuck in the stick them, make sure those coffins are nice and stuffed with kilos, ship them on out, pay somebody $40K to turn a blind eye. You think this doesn't happen, people? You gotta wake the hell up. Absolutely does happen. All the contractors that come after us, they offered to hire me. 6 months in Afghanistan, babysitting opium fields. Get out of here for the CIA. Get the hell out of here. You want to do that now? Again? By the way, you know who was on the other side of that mountain region? There was a kill zone. For people who are there, you know what I'm talking about. It was a kill zone where the Taliban sat on one side of the mountain range and Iran sat on the other. And when the smugglers came through, they just murked them. That's why nothing left there. There was a killing field of opium traffickers, a killing field. We come in, Iran picks up their weapons and walks away, and nobody cared on our side. So so it slipped through, and it was highly it's devastating to our domestic population. Devastating. But what's up, Robert? Here we go.
I just emailed you. I think we might start off with the 2 YouTube clips.
The YouTubes? Okay.
Yeah, to your point about you've heard this story before and have reason for skepticism. And listen, folks, you might think this is Benjamin Netanyahu 2025 or Mark Levin 2025.
Well, not Yahoo's first. You want Levin first? You got Netanyahu first.
Well, I was going to do the 2 YouTube clips I sent you.
Which one? Okay.
Because it's Netanyahu 2002. And listen to what he has to say and see if it sounds exactly like what he's claiming now in 2025.
Let's go ahead and roll it. Let me make sure I'm all the way back here. Okay, because it's a short,
No question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. The nuclear arms Saddam will place the security of our entire world at risk. And make no mistake about it, if and once Saddam has nuclear weapons, the terror network will have nuclear weapons.
All right, and there
it was identical to what he said about Iran last night on Fox News. He was making the same lie in 2002 that he's now talking about Iran. And now let's go to the second clip, because the second clip is what Levin and all the war whores are proclaiming will happen now with Iran. That regime change will lead to all this peace and liberalism and freedom and democracy flourishing. Let's hear what Saddam Hussein predicted about what would happen if we went into Iraq.
Netanyahu.
This is what Netanyahu predicted would happen if we took out Saddam Hussein in Iraq.
By the way, in front of you may recognize the scenery, ladies and gentlemen, okay? And it's a C-SPAN clip. And listen, just for the record, because before I run this, I just want to point out, because I already see it already. Robert and I have multi-year history on what are the odds defending Israel against the Palestinian people. So this anti-Semitic bullshit that we keep getting is you're allowed to disagree with people. It doesn't make you anti-Semitic. The older I get, folks, the less stomach I have for war. And probably because it's always a lie. it's fair game to go back and rewind the tape and say, gee, what did these people say last time? All right, because it's the same thing over and over again. The same thing. And that word preemptive, you immediately lose me when you talk about the virtues of preemptive strikes. All right, you immediately lose me. Ron Paul, excuse me. He was right the entire time. But let me shut up and play the clip. I mean, because
if you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. And I think that people sitting right next door in Iran, young people, and many others will say, the time of such regimes, of such despots, is gone. There is a new age, something new is happening.
Whoa! Imagine what the
Yeah, you
world
can
would
stop
be
it
like
there.
with him in
let me, because I just want to say this. I just want to say
Freedom would
this.
flourish around all the Middle East. All we have to do is take out Saddam Hussein. All we have to do is take out Bashar Assad. All we have to do is take out Muhammad Gaddafi. And all we did is create one disaster after another after another. And to this day, I haven't heard Netanyahu apologize for the lies he told to get Americans killed in a needless, counterproductive war.
Robert, the biggest problem I have with those claims and people who made them is, let's say you were not lying, you were just wrong. How on earth do you, because like this is the same attitude I have towards pollsters. It's like, are they faking it? Are they, well, I mean, after a while, when there's sufficient evidence that what you're saying or what you're doing, right, is incorrect, you need to change course. There has to be a course correction. Otherwise, I am forced to then assume that you are doing it on purpose, which means at some point you're just lying, right? So with this, what bothers me is that the Mesh Shimers, all of these guys, they were so right when the neocons and the neoliberals were so wrong. There's not a touch of humility. You're not embarrassed at all. The same thing I say with pollsters. You're not embarrassed at all. Only the worst thing is like when you get something with international relations wrong, when you get statecraft wrong, people die. Lots and lots of people die. Iran was being balanced by Iraq. Every 10 years, they'd kill each other in this bloody feud and, spend each other to the point of exhaustion where they really didn't have significant influence on the sphere, their sphere of influence anymore. Their area, their their hemisphere, basically. Not only that, but the region in the hemisphere, which, of course, the Mideast. The best thing would have, if you were really opposed to Iran in that whole equation, you're Israel, and your main fear is that you don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. The best, most smartest thing that you could have done was leave Saddam Hussein in power. He was constantly draining them, constantly, but they didn't, and they were wrong. And now here we are again. It just really pissed me off yesterday because yesterday was Father's Day. And it's like these pieces of shit are all over every Sunday show. Like, yeah, give me your son so I can, Happy Father's Day. I want to kill your kids. Like this is like unbelievable to me. These same people.
Well, and I see some people in the chat that are living in La La Land. Israel's support is now net negative in the United States.
Yeah.
Net negative.
Guys, this is
amongst young voters, it has collapsed. Amongst evangelicals, it is declining. Amongst non-evangelicals, it's extremely negative. And you got these boomer cons living in a fantasy world that think, the only people critical of Israel are anti-Semites and a small group of wacky progressives. You're wrong. The entire world is now anti-Israel. The Israel had what we predicted all the way back was if they went too hard with the annexation, if they went full Netanyahu, they were going to isolate themselves and drive. They took October 7th, which could have been a rallying cry for the world to support Israel outside of the Muslim world. And they turned it into a negative, but just like Bush did with 9/11. Netanyahu did the exact same thing with October 7th. Overthrow the government of Syria. Go into Lebanon, go into Gaza, try to basically annex Gaza. And and now you want us to get involved with the war with Iran. And as people saying, Israel's not asking for U.S. involvement in Iran. Have you not read the news for the last 48 hours? That's precisely what Israel is demanding. They are demanding Trump join the offensive war against Israel, against Iran.
It is. It is. And he
And
said,
these are people
no,
living in a
by the
la-la
way.
fantasy world that they don't. The BoomerCon era is over, Mark Levin. The working class that has been decimated by these dumb wars is done with it.
Last Friday, I think it was, somebody asked me a question on the show about whether this would be a positive. This is actually why some in the Trump administration are like they've had it up to here with Netanyahu and some people around him, because it would have been a huge net positive if the U.S. didn't have to play this mediator game and he got a peace deal. They are talking, Robert. They're freaking talking, and they did this. Like, you're telling me.
I mean,
You're
Israel
telling
went in
me that
and
it was
killed the very
imminent.
people who were about to get a deal done with Trump.
That's what
That's what they did,
Trump
and
is
everybody that has any objectivity knows it. And it's only the BoomerCons, the 72-year-olds who can't wait for their next COVID shot, watching Fox News, who think otherwise.
They wanted to kill Khomeini, bro. And Trump is like, if you do that,
how do you think Iran will respond to that? How do you think the Muslim world will respond to that?
Yeah.
To understand, the Shia religion is to Islam what Catholicism is to Christianity, meaning that the Ayatollah is seen very different, almost Pope-like amongst Shia followers. How do you think the Catholic world will respond if we murdered the Pope? I mean, the idiocy I see. Oh, John Hannity told me. How many other dumb lies have these people bought into? So we can go through. I got a bunch of data through public. What happens with these wars? Start out popular.
Yeah, they always start out popular.
Richard and I talked about all the way back to Ukraine 2022. Said this would backfire. This would hurt Democrats. Anybody who was on board with it would go down with that ship. And that is exactly what happened, because that's the nature of these kind of wars. They lie to get us into them. They lie about what will happen when we get into them. They cost us blood and treasure. Even the most popular war in American political history in the modern era, the first Persian Gulf Iraq War, within a year, the man who did it got the lowest percentage of support for an incumbent in modern American history. Why? Because Ross Perot and Pat Buchanan both ran against that war. Ross Perot said no blood for oil. The political amnesia I see Lee Smith, who's, does great work on Russiagate, but he's out there telling everybody, Americans are going to be gung-ho for a war with Iran. MAGA can't wait for their kids to go to another Mideastern country and die for some stupid nonsense, for some dumb lie that Netanyahu has told. So but we got lots of data we can show you.
Let me start first with the one that you had said, because I think it's important for people to understand MAGA. There's a part of MAGA. They do support Israel, but they don't support getting into a fight for Israel. Okay. And it's
Israel
a big difference
over Hamas, but America over Israel.
Right. And they're not opposed to war for the sake of just being opposed to war. They're opposed to war because of the lies that were told to them. So here is, I'm going to do the Pew one first, because I think that one's for when we were talking about, there it is. U.S. religious groups differ widely in views. You can even see Protestants now have a 40% unfavorable rating towards Israel, 26% for whites, white evangelical Protestants.
For context. Israel now has a net unfavorable rating. That is the first time in the modern history in American polling that has ever happened. And that's before we're about to get into this nonsense with another war in Iran. And we'll get to the bigger impact for Trump is inflation, and how that was the number one issue that got him elected. And this war could completely unravel that by sending oil and energy prices through the roof. You pointed out last week in the data, the number one reason for cost of living going down was energy, oil and gas costs going down.
Yeah.
If that spikes, it unravels the entire economy. It unravels Trump's cost of living controls. It unravels Trump's budget and guarantees Democrats win the House in 2026. So that's what's at stake just from a domestic political perspective. But what we're going to go through is a bunch of data that will show you that Israel has been collapsing in the Netanyahu's version. Once Israel went full Netanyahu, they turned the entire world against them, including the United States of America, where Israel now has a net unfavorable rating. And we're going to break down where those, when you have white Protestants,
that's what I was trying to show
unfavorable
that
than
for.
favorable, that is a bad sign. The only thing they're holding on to is evangelicals and Jewish voters. That's it. Everybody else is negative on Israel now, and that's before this latest nonsense.
Yeah, that's that February 2024 poll, right? Because that one is the one I was going to get up here in a second. That one is, I want to save that. I mean, we could show it right now, but give me a second because I kind of want to go in order here. If I go back to, it's Israel slide 5, and then the Iraq war thing, how people have to understand how Americans always start out because of the war drum, right? The war drum beaten. I don't even think we would start out as high as we have in some of the past examples you have to show people here. We're not going to start out anywhere near that high with something like this, Robert. We're not. But you'll see how over time it collapses and you always end up on the wrong side of it. Always. Here it is. Israel slide 5. This is the one I really wanted to show. This is from February of 2024. And what you can see is once upon a time, 10 years ago, I would say, this was much more lopsided. All right.
Oh, completely. It used to be 70-7. So this question is, you're given a binary choice, Israel or the Palestinians. I'll tell you, Baris and I would be more with the Israeli people. The way this is framed, the fact that this number just a year ago was so far down, and especially what the boomer cons don't understand is look at those numbers amongst what have Baris and I been talking about for the last 2 years. The biggest voter group up for grabs are working class, minorities, millennials, and Zoomers. That's who is most up for grabs that Trump can steal, Republicans can steal, conservatives, populists can steal en masse. Smart populist Democrats can do the same. They just show no interest in doing it. But that's the key. And if you dig into these voter groups, you pointed out in the 4 Freedoms polls, these voters care about food freedom more than others. These care about medical freedom more than others. But you know what else they care more about? The senior citizens getting their 3rd COVID booster shot, no, they're not going to go to war. These young voters, no, they might.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing is there has been a massive shift amongst young people, more pronounced amongst Democrats, but not alone to Democrats in terms of their opinion of Israel. And what you're seeing right here amongst Zoomer Republicans, they're almost
that's what I was going to point out.
Only 28% of Zoomer Republicans that say they side with the Israeli people. Only 28%. 40% of millennials and Gen Xers. You only get real support amongst boomer cons, right? That's the last group that really, and the boomer cons live in their fantasy world. They sit there and watch Fox News from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And they just think in between their soap operas and whatever else. And they think their housing value is going up. So everything's great. They live in a fantasy world. They live in the Sean Hannity fantasy world that is disconnected from what's happening with ordinary voters. These are the people advising Trump. Oh, go to war with Iran. Yeah. Join the war with Iran. It'll be really popular. They'll love you. This is what Lee Smith is out there telling people. Oh, based on bogus poll questions that say, if Iran was right about to nuke you, would you be okay?
I know. I got that.
Nonsense like that. We'll go through the honest questions. Baris will have his, once the public polling project is fully funded, we'll add this to Trump challenging judges. To the right kind of questions. There's a way of asking it. Is this worth putting U.S. troops on the ground? What you're going to find is that the key independent swing voters will say overwhelmingly, no, it's not. But the data is already here, and that you can't even get them to side with the Israeli people over the Palestinians amongst young Republicans. This is what the normie is not seeing.
Which is arguably the group that won him the election in the margins that he did, Robert, because especially in places like the Midwest, which I think we should go to next, because we asked a question, and that's why I think the slide is so interesting. We asked a question all 3 elections, which was related to who you thought would get you involved in a new conflict. When it was Trump versus Hillary Clinton, everywhere, in every state, people said Donald Trump is the peacemaker. She's a warmonger, right? In 2020, something weird happened. I think, media propaganda in some states, and they ended up being states that Biden won. Minnesota, even Michigan, Pennsylvania was even. It was slightly toward Trump, which is yet another reason why I think he was robbed. Anyway, but Ohio always is still favored Trump. Florida still favored Trump. But in some of these states, like Wisconsin, Minnesota, they said that Biden was less likely to get people involved in new wars. So this is what I need people to understand. The group that you see with the biggest red bar right there under Republicans is getting less Republican. That's number one overall, that age group. And the one where you see it more divided is getting more Republican. That may be bad for Republicans in the short term and low turnout elections, but in the mid to long term, it is a devastating trend for Democrats. It's the one that has people like smart Democratic pollsters and strategists like David Shore. These are the trends that have David terrified, because he thinks that Trump is turning younger people against the Democratic Party, along with some of the policies they adopted. And this could be something that could reverse that. And here's why. In 24, again, people told us overwhelmingly Kamala Harris will be the war whore. And Donald Trump is why we want him back. He was the peacemaker. If they thought that he wasn't before because they believed some media narrative, they changed their mind. They had him, and they expect Trump to negotiate things, not to fight with they automatically or fall prey to the war drums that get beaten. They expect him to do what he did with Pakistan and India, which, by the way, I really need you guys to understand he was in the middle of that, and this messed him up. It was like, in my mind, they didn't want it. They didn't want a deal. So they did this to F him. You know what I'm saying? Like, they did this to hurt those efforts. This is the Midwest. Look at this question, Robert. Thinking about the candidates for president this year, who do you think is more likely to make foreign policy decisions based on American interests first? In Wisconsin, where, again, it was close, but people said that Biden would be the peacemaker and put America first, which was crazy. I mean, to me, as a pollster, I was like, man, the media did their job. You know, like that's, I mean, because that's what it was. But look in Wisconsin, Trump 51, Harris 49. I mean, guys, we're talking about a margin. He basically won the state by damn close to it, a point off.
And if you knew the history of Wisconsin that swung against George W. Bush because of the first Iraq war, this would not surprise you at all.
It was the one and only one that went to the caucus.
Correct.
Because of the war, right? We've gone over this a bunch of times, by the way. I don't know why some people are still like surprised when we come out thinking this way. Look at Pennsylvania and Michigan, by the way. One of the big key questions in our polling going into the election is Michigan really going to vote for Trump at a bigger margin than Wisconsin? Is that going to happen? And it made sense to me, while it didn't make sense to others, and it didn't make sense with history. Michigan historically was the hardest of the three to get, but it wasn't this election cycle. And why? Because of the non-white working class and the younger voters. There are more of them in Michigan than there are in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, there are still a bunch of white boomers and a bunch of neocons. Honestly, there are a bunch of people like, what's that radio? Charlie Sykes, right? I mean, there you go. I mean, that's a great example. There are a bunch of those leftover Bushites that are pretending like they're litmus test conservatives. They always oppose Trump because they said they're the principled conservatives, and Trump was really conservative, right?
Like Mark Levin, who three different times in 2016 said he was so never Trump, he would organize a protest of Trump in the general election for conservatives to not vote for him, as did Ben Shapiro. It's not a coincidence the war whores were overwhelmingly anti-Trump in 2016. Levin was implicitly pro-DeSantis more than Trump in 2024, and he's trying to hide this information from the world because unlike J.D. Vance, unlike Tulsi Gabbard, unlike Pete Hegseth, all of whom do not want us further involved in the Iraq-Iran war, unlike Richard Baris, Mark Levin hasn't served a day in his life. He's a couch potato conservative. He looks like a couch potato conservative. That's who and what he is. But the Trump won because he was perceived as the more anti-war candidate.
Right.
Anybody out there saying otherwise is lying.
Now, that doesn't mean they perceive him as a like tree hugging peacenik liberal from the 60s. Guys, don't get it twisted. But like, they do expect him to use the threat of force to get a deal, whatever. But they don't expect him to actually do it. When did Trump really start to take a real hit, guys, in his first term? It actually wasn't the Russia hoax. The Russia hoax was already going on. It was when CNN proclaimed that this is the day Donald Trump became president, when he started lobbing missiles at Syria over a hoax. What turned out to be, it wasn't a hoax. It was a CIA plant. I mean, they let that gas go, Robert. Can we just be on? I mean, like that. I'm supposed to ignore all of these.
Was it another claim that we had to get involved because a Mideastern country had dangerous, scary weapons? I mean, how many times do people have to fall for this? If you wonder why they keep repeating the lie, it's because some of you out there keep buying it. You keep sucking it up. Quit being an embarrassment to yourselves by buying this utter garbage.
I don't know why Israel couldn't have. Like, I find no real reason why Israel couldn't have gave Donald Trump another 4 weeks. Like, I can't get a straight answer to that, Robert.
It's clear to me Trump thought they were going to attack this week, and he was going to leverage it over the weekend with a meeting on. So you can explain it.
And why was Gabbard not at that meeting? And I have a clip I want to play with that. Can we play a clip real quick?
Yeah.
I have a clip I want to play. It's like the two most. And listen, you can say what you want about Tucker Carlson. I don't know what's going on in his head and his heart when it comes to Israel. He certainly has gone off a little bit of
there's aspects I disagree with him on, but But he himself said one of the reasons why he's speaking out now more against war is because he believes he feels guilt. He feels personal guilt over promoting the past wars. Yeah. He's like, he realized that he would participated in a lie, even though he himself was lied to. He's like, he sees this, and he sees Netanyahu's Israel as a constant threat to get us involved in war.
But he's certainly not talking to an anti-Semite in this clip, which you and I both know and know well. All right, this guy is very pro-Israel. He views Israel the way that Robert and I view Israel, which is, they're a bastion of Western values in a sea of anti-Western values. I mean, that's it. I mean, there's no disputing that fact, but it doesn't mean that you have to want it. It doesn't. You can recognize that and still not want to get into a war with Iran. Because, by the way, this was the worst time to do it, Robert. They didn't even wait for the damn exemptions to go through and take effect. And for people who don't know what I'm talking about, when Trump was when he was president the first time, he did something other presidents don't do when it comes to sanctions. They still give exemptions. They're called SREs. So there's sanctions on this country, Iran in this case, and you can't buy oil for them. Except I'm going to give Great Britain an SRE. I'm going to give China an SRE. I'm going to give France and Germany. So, like, it's all bull because everyone's still buying the oil anyway, right? And he bankrupted their exports. He bankrupted their ability to fund terror. He bankrupted their ability to fund Hamas, right? So, and Hezbollah and all these other groups. When Biden got in, that's how they had the money. That's how they had the money to launch the attack in October, because Biden removed them and the money came flowing back in from China and elsewhere. Trump didn't even get a chance to choke them out again, get them to the point where their ability to defend themselves or launch a counter strike is significantly decreased. Israel did not expect them to hit back that hard, that fast.
No. In fact, I mean,
and their shield failed. Their shield failed. Why are we pretending like this was a resounding success? Actually, we have another clip of this idiot. All right. I'm sorry. You guys know that I personally really, whatever. I'm sure he's a nice dude, but he doesn't know what time it is. And he has no business being in this time slot for talk radio. He took the greatest talk radio voice ever. He took that time slot, and this guy's a tool. The guy's a clown. All right. And here it is. It's a Fox News clip with Clay Travis. Everything he says here, almost, Robert, is completely wrong.
Oh, yeah.
It's completely
what
wrong.
Travis is really good at is giving you losing sports bets. He's one of the biggest losing sports bettors in the world.
How did this guy get Rush's spot?
The reason why they gave him Rush Limbaugh's spot is because he and CIA Buck Sexton would toe the line on a lot of deep state policies in ways that Rush Limbaugh in the second half of his career
would
refused.
never do. He would
Exactly.
post Iraq War. Rush Limbaugh was a totally different guy.
Right.
All right, this actually
He
Trump
returned to
era.
He returned to 1980s Rush Limbaugh.
He did, right?
He came from Midwestern anti-war conservatism,
which is what it was before the Bush era. That's
Yes.
what the Republican Party was, folks, before the Bush era. It's just that Democrats got so crazy in the 60s that even during Reagan, it was like all of these leftover Democrats and communists who just had a more war whore position when it came to foreign policy. Those are called neocons. That's where they came from. Bill Kristol's daddy was a communist. He was a far left case. He only became a part of the Republican Party because he was left homeless. They were all left homeless by the complete, 180 turn. Democrats started Vietnam, and then they pretended like they were the ones who, But let's play this. I'll play this real. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say briefly. Look at Reagan when he got trapped into having our soldiers there in Beirut.
Yeah,
and they end up being attacked. Did he launch a whole war against the rest of the Mideast, or did he get us the hell out? He got us out. That's what Ronald Wilson Reagan did. He got us out, not further in, out. The Richard Nixon, I think he took too long to do it, but ultimately did get us out of Vietnam.
Yeah.
As go to the 1976 vice presidential debate. Bob Dolan is sitting there debating Walter Mondale, and what does he tell him? He goes, "If I could count all the dead from all the Democrat wars, that's old school, traditional founding fathers version of conservatism and republicanism in America."
Here's Buck's Clay Travis discussing with, I believe this is Brett Baer, right? Yeah, Brett Baer on Sunday, this whole ordeal, and listen to how he characterizes the attack that Israel launched, which is completely backward. It's the opposite of reality.
You were in the Oval Office on Thursday.
Yeah.
Let's put the picture up. You were meeting with both the president and the vice president. While there was this drumbeat of stories, it could be any hour, any minute now.
Howard
What
Kurtz,
did you
my bad.
take away since you were there at that moment?
That's me with my co-host Buck Sexton on the radio show. Look, Trump was incredibly relaxed. J.D. Vance came in during the meeting as well. I think this was intentional. You guys just played the press conference that he had a bit earlier. Mm-hmm. I think they wanted to send the message to Iran that all things were normal, that the negotiations were ongoing to allow the Israeli attacks to be even more significant than they otherwise would have been and more successful. So I think, look.
So it was a giant head fake?
I think it was a big pump fake. I think it was a head fake. Look, I think that Trump, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth went to a Nationals baseball game with his kids. I think they all did a fabulous job of behind the scenes keeping this action remaining secret. And look, I give credit to Israel. This looks like it may be the most successful attack in this manner that we've ever seen in terms of the impact that it's going to have.
Bro.
That's how stupid Clay Travis is. This moron is a disgrace. Imagine, this is going to go down very, very badly. How many times did we hear this at the beginning of the last Iraq war? How many times did we hear this at the beginning of the Afghanistan war? How many times did we hear it during the first Iraq war? How many times did we hear it during parts of like the Korean and Vietnam war?
Yeah.
And here he is just repeating the same stupid half-assed nitwit lies because he doesn't have a clue about geopolitics, doesn't have a clue about military policy. The man is, I told him, do you want to wager? I said, you probably shouldn't wager because all you do when you wager is lose because you're that big of a loser. Clay, middle name loser, Travis, is sitting there giving, two problems with this. One, thinking it's a really smart geopolitical decision to tell the whole world America's full of shit when they are trying to negotiate. Whatever you do, never trust Americans because we're here to sabotage you. What a great message to send to the world, you moron. Second, Israel's great success. How's it working out in Tel Aviv right now? Buying into shock and awe all over again.
I was waiting for you to finish.
It's amazing that the people that forget, shock and awe, the Iraq war's going great, da-da-da. And I get the surveys to show you, within a year, almost every war we've been in since World War II has turned unpopular in America. Literally every single one, within a year to 2 years. Why? Because they lie. They lie to get us into war. They lie about what's happening with the war the way nitwits like Clay Travis do. But if this was popularly perceived around the world that this is what we did, it's an embarrassment to America, not an achievement.
This is a major problem that we have, America abroad, is this idea that, and I got to get this Iraq war thing here. Oh, wait, this one's even better. The right or wrong one. But yeah, this is a major problem we have, which is that we don't have, what's the word? I don't say trust is not, it's not good enough to just say trust. We don't have the confidence of people when we're negotiating. And this is one of Trump's biggest hurdles. He would have gotten a deal with Kim Jong-un if it wasn't for this image we have, thanks to Clinton and Obama. But he made a deal with Bush, guys. And Gaddafi said, I will stop my program. I'll stop but I'm going to need something because I'm getting money to basically keep my society stable from your enemies. And they are giving me that money to produce these weapons and to destabilize the region. If I don't get this money, I can't feed my people. And if I can't feed my people, they're going to kill me. So I will do it, but I need that humanitarian aid. And Bush said, don't worry whether I'm here or not. The U.S. always keeps their word. And he did it. If you think Gaddafi's just a bad guy and, oh, screw him, and go to WikiLeaks, go to the database right now and type in Gaddafi, and you will see read the man's cables for yourself. And you tell me whether or not that shit ain't evil. He was begging us. He said, I did everything you asked me to do. It's sad to listen to a foreign leader speak like this, but it's worse because you know what the end result is going to be. The whole world's going to see that. The whole world knows what the American public was not being told, which is that we screwed him over. He ended up being stuck like a pig by his own people in the street. We ran clips on Fox News and everybody laughed. A bloody Gaddafi falling all over himself while the people were beating him and tying him up with his hands bound, kicking the shit out of him. Kim Jong-un looked at that and said, no way. Sorry, Trump, but you'll be gone one day. And when you're gone, I can't trust you guys. And it's an enormous obstacle to peace, guys.
And now Clay Travis is telling the world, never trust Trump.
Full of shit.
Never trust Trump. What a great achievement. Woohoo! Now we are totally distrusted around the world. Trump has no negotiating credibility with any country in the world if they actually believed this moron. And this moron thought, what an achievement. Woohoo! That's how stupid Clay Travis is.
Wow, he's so good at bullshitting people, man. I was totally screwed.
He lied so we could do a sabotage attack. Woohoo! Wasn't that great? Right after the exact same thing appeared to happen in Russia on the eve of the Russia-Ukraine talks, where there was a terror attack launched on Russian trains and a drone attack on Russian military nuclear capabilities. It now looks like Trump lies to countries, according to Clay Travis. Look, he lies and suckers other countries into thinking he cares about peace when he doesn't, so that he can do a sneak terror attack on them. In what world is that smart politics? There's no world.
Yeah.
It's only a fantasy world if you're playing some video games like this dipshit does in order to understand geopolitics. It's an embarrassment how stupid, and that people are taking him seriously, and that Fox News is promoting this garbage.
We have some really, I mean, we can go all the way back to Korea, guys. But let's just start first with Iraq, which was a popular war. The first one is from, well, I think they're both from Pew, but yeah, because their charts look different back then. Pew Research, we can say what we want to say about it, but a trend's a trend. You know what I mean? Whether it's like the right margin or not, we can still look at the trend and see which way it went. Do you remember when COVID first happened and Robert and I were on What Are the Odds telling you that right now, Donald Trump's approval rating looks better because of the lockdowns. But 6 months from now, this will come back to bite every Republican who supported it. Trump knew that, which is why 2 weeks later, he immediately changed his tune and started saying things like, the cure cannot be worse than the disease, right? We need to be able, this is America. This country was founded on the right to worship our God. You can't tell us we can't go to church for Easter, right? So he knew immediately that this was going to end up bad. he knows this, what we're going to show you is true too. Right now, it doesn't have the support that like the Iraq war had. Okay, for instance, it would not. Getting involved with Israel right now is probably, how can I'm not sure I can find another example, Robert, of like what would support versus oppose, helping Israel fight Iran. We already know from the which I can show people in a second, but how many people actually even support giving the weapons has deteriorated significantly over time. But here's support for the Iraq war. All right. Is it right or wrong? Basically, was the Iraq war right or wrong? April 3rd, right? What? That's the invasion.
April 2003. Mass.
Yep.
Before
April 2003. Excuse me.
Before we
right
invaded, the country was split. We invade, and you get the rally around the flag effect. Which, by the way, everyone should remember when they think invading a country is going to lead to that country overthrowing its government. It pretty much never has. And in the few instances where it's been successful, do you consider Libya a success in the modern world? Do you? Because you've got to be as daft and as dumb as they come if you think overthrowing Gaddafi was a geopolitical success. But what happens? As people figure out they've been lied to about why we're in the war, lied to about what's happening in the war, lied to about what is likely to happen in the war, what you see is American public opinion flip. And this has happened on every single war since World War II. And it happened on World War I. World War II is the only war that it's the reason why the neocons always cite it, why the globalists in the EU always cite it, because it's the only war that has ever got public opinion support during and after the war is over. Every other war in the United States, World War I, Korean War, Vietnam War, Iraq War I, Iraq War II, Afghanistan War, has all Libya and Syria interventions, Kosovo interventions, have once we saw what was really happening and the American people got to see it live, people turned against it constantly and consistently. This is what will happen if Trump gets involved in Iran war. You might get some initial, woohoo, rally around the flag, America's great, America's back, all that kind of jazz. And what will happen? And George Poppy Bush thought this meant he had a guaranteed reelection. Instead, he ended up with one of the lowest vote totals of any incumbent in American political history. And both his primary opponent and his general election independent opponent ran one of their key issues, anti-war. Go back and watch the 92 debate where Perot is sitting there saying, you know what? We got into this war. He called it no blood for oil. He goes, not one drop of American blood is worth all the oil in the world. People forget that aspect of Perot's campaign because it's not convenient to the media narrative to remind them of it. But even that war ended up becoming politically toxic. That's what will happen if we get involved. And here, we're just going to go through some charts that just show you this. We're not making this up. We can see the data and have studied it.
Troops in Iraq. It's almost identical to that trend. Look at that. That's almost identical, Robert. I mean, my God. And you can see the negative takes over. It does get a little bit closer as we get to Obama. And I think what wound up, happening there is that people knew things were going to change soon. Yeah. The surge did appear to be working a little bit. So it was unpopular at the time. As you can see, the surge, when Bush did it, he did it when it was deeply unpopular. Let me just point this out too, which is that Americans were already kind of confused on what to do. And we'll address it in a second, but like to the people who say, all right, well then forget about polls, like what's the morally right thing to do, right? Well, just bear with us, okay? Here's the ABC poll, all right, which is interesting.
So this is direct, the people that are claiming this would be pop. So this was back during peak Iranian propaganda early on in the Obama administration.
Yeah.
This is when Hannity and Pat Buchanan debated Iran back then, that people are seeing some clips of now. So there's a right way to poll. So there's three things to do. You look at what the American political sentiment is in general. As Richard and I have been pointing out, ever since the last Iraq war, being anti-war is the winning candidate. Being perceived as less likely to get us into a war makes you the winning candidate. Whoever has been perceived that way has won every single election since 2008 presidential.
Bush won, by the way.
In 2000, he was perceived as less likely to get us involved in war. The 2004 was the only exception in that whole time frame. He barely won, and then it completely unraveled as people fully understood what was happening in Iraq. Yep. But so that's one aspect. Background, being less likely to get us stuck in a war. And people forget this about Republicans. Eisenhower was very popular. You know what Eisenhower did? Kept us out of war. He got us out of the Korean War that killed Harry Truman's presidency. His handling of the Korean War.
I'm going to show that in a second, by the way.
Yeah, same with Reagan. Reagan, people forget this. Not only win the Cold War, he kept us out of war. He kept us out. The only place we went into was Grenada, right? I mean, that was like an overgrown dormitory. I mean, that was it. He got us out of Beirut. He realized, oh, this is trouble in the Mideast. I'm not hanging around. I'm out of here. But the other thing, the second aspect, is you have to ask the right question. And so the other thing that Richard and I are explaining here is that in terms of politics of war, you'll get an immediate rally the flag aspect. Yep. But then over time, when the reasons don't pan out, when the excuses don't pan out, when the justification doesn't pan out, the country turns on it. But last but not least,
lies get exposed, right? And then exploited, Robert. War gets exploited, right? So
when people are losing money at home and losing kids overseas, that's no way to build a popular war. But last but not least, what we're going to highlight here is something Baris has been talking about in a wide range of contexts now for years, which is a poll is only as good as the pollster, and a poll is only as good as the question that's asked, the context and framing.
This is actually pretty decent. This is because
this one is actually good. It's one of the few that is. So even at peak Iran hysteria, Iran is a nuclear weapon. By the way, for those that don't remember, because I know there's a good number that don't, they were saying Iran had a nuclear weapon, Netanyahu, all the way back to 1991. You can find Netanyahu quoting saying, Iran has a nuclear weapon and is right about to get it. He's been saying it every other year since 1991.
This poll was conducted, October of 2009, folks, just so you know.
When Americans believed Iran had a nuclear weapon, to give you an idea. So this was peak war hysteria to get us involved in Iran. And yet, when the question is asked in an appropriate framing, show them what the answers were.
So to try to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, because at this time, from Fox News to CNN to the cover of the New York Times, folks, was saying that it's imminent. The Mossad, the CIA, they all agree their ability, and they had it basically. They just needed the what's it called? The system, the deployment system, right? So in order to get the ICBMs to work and to be able to deploy them, they're a month away, 30 days away at this time, they were saying, all right? So in order to prevent them from developing nuclear weapons, would you support or oppose? And then they say basically each of the following. All right, you guys, for those of you who follow how we put together polls, you know, this is called a matrix question. And then they will lay out each of the following. The United States, well, first of all, you'll see direct diplomatic talks between the United States and Iran to try to resolve the situation. This is what Donald Trump is doing right now, okay? Look at what it has. 82% support to 18% who oppose. Now, you could argue it didn't get us anywhere. Looking out, it's all these years later. Here we are almost 20 years later now. Well, guess what? That's the difference in Donald Trump. He actually does this shit. All right. Like the others don't. Barack Obama was not a good president in the sense that he couldn't talk to members of Capitol Hill. He was bad at doing that to get his legislation passed, and he was absolutely atrocious at negotiating with people abroad. Like, he just didn't like it. The guy he's kind of lazy. He just liked walking aloof around the White House, being the man. That's it. That's what he liked about being the president. B, offering Iran financial incentives, such as aid money or more trade, if it abandons any effort to develop nuclear weapons. You may notice this is opposed. 30% say no. So like the liberal way of doing it was not the right way. And that is how Obama handled it. It's what Biden did. They wanted to give them money, and that money went towards further development. 67% said, no, we don't want that. Imposing international economic sanctions against Iran, which is another tool Trump used. The difference being what I told you with SREs, which are exemptions. You can't do the sanctions and then let China buy their oil. Like, it's still a ton of, you're talking about trillions of dollars over 10 years coming in, billions a year. 78% said they did support that. 18 said that they did not. All right, next one, highlighted because it matters. The United States bombing Iran's nuclear development sites. I mean, in case you didn't notice, what did Israel just do? right? Like what are they?
It's what they
42%.
want us to help them. They want us to have boots on the ground and
Pointing the
directly
laser, Robert.
bomb
Yep.
Iran and join it with U.S. planes, U.S. ships, U.S. military personnel. That's what Israel is demanding Trump do. They've been arguing it all weekend. There is a massive pressure campaign on the White House to do it. And one of the key things that we're here to counter is the public opinion likely reaction to that. And
Which
what
is gonna
Trump
be
is being
atrocious.
told by the Lee Smiths of the world is that joining the war in Iran will be very popular. Popular with his base, popular with the American people. They are giving him bad intel. Like I know some people in the chat are like, "Oh, Barnes, why don't you just trust Trump's judgment?" Follow what Baris and I have been doing now for 5-6 years. All right, we were the ones that tell you Trump was getting bad advice on COVID policy. We were one of the only people that said, no, you just can't reflexively defer to
No,
Trump.
we were literally the only people from the very beginning. We literally were the only two people on YouTube saying this is bad news. This is bad idea. They're wrong. This has never happened in the history of the world before. Governments do not force commerce to shut down. And oh, by the way, the data says that the fastest way to contract this damn thing is to be stuck in a place over long periods of time in close proximity to each other, especially when the only place you could go is to the freaking grocery store so you could go feel and size up melons like everybody else who picked their nose and touched that melon before you. It was the dumbest policy. He's a man, guys. He's still just a man, all right?
And he has a lot of people around him giving him bad information. Bad intel.
Very heavy pressure. Look who we just had in the White House. Look at who we just had in the White House talking to him. One guy's an ex-CIA agent who jumped up and down with pom-poms for the Iraq War, and the other one is a total clown. This is who he's got sitting in front of him. And not for nothing, I know someone who just met with Vance. I'm not going to say because then you'll know who it is. Everyone will know who it is. He just spent half a day with J.D. Vance not long ago, and there are constantly bad people around them giving them the worst advice possible. And when you're stuck inside that town, the longer you're stuck in, it doesn't matter who you are. The longer you are there, guys, the easier it is for you to become, I don't want to say not isolated, but
that's right. They do it deliberately. Susie Wiles, I mean, to your point, why wasn't like somebody said, oh, Iran's just about to have a nuclear weapon? Aside from the fact that that claim has been falsely made for the last 30 years and that you've been wrong for all 30 years, that, which I don't see the Jeffs or the others in the chat dealing with why they've been wrong. Tulsi Gabbard, our director of national intelligence, just said a month ago or so, that Iran is nowhere near getting a nuclear weapon, and that doesn't even have a nuclear weapon program in place. So if you disagree, you have to disagree with President Trump's chosen director of national intelligence, who I might suggest might have more access to honest information than the rest of us do, in order to convince yourself that now is the time the lie was suddenly true. But even people who believed it back in 2009, when asked, should the U.S. bomb Iran? Yeah. Should the U.S. join the war against Iran? Overwhelmingly, no. It was intensely unpopular when properly asked.
And look at invading with U.S. forces to remove the Iranian government from power, which unbelievably a scary number of people spent all of Father's Day doing on the Sunday shows, was 33% support, 62% oppose. And I would argue now, since Trump is the benefactor of much of the coalition in this poll that elected Barack Obama, this is probably even worse now. You brought up Tulsi Gabbard now twice. I want to play this clip because this is what makes me nervous. When you guys say, well, he's got good instincts, just trust, listen, he's still being influenced by people who have his ear. And I know this is the case, guys. I just went on a freaking Truth Social rant about him and about the decision-making process sometimes with political candidates. That is because of the people he has around him. Folks, they literally are telling this guy to stick behind Lindsey Graham, even though he's dead in the water, because Lindsey Graham got him Democratic votes in South Carolina. Like, this is how, and he believes it. I'm telling you, I know he does. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not
they convinced him. Well, it's a flaw of Trump. every great sale, it's a virtue and a vice. Every great
is.
salesman is a sucker for a good ad.
Yeah.
It's the name. Now, because part of what, like, you have to be somewhat delusional to be Trump in the sense that, okay, I'm unelected in 2015.
I
I
could
have the
just do
highest
what I
negative
want.
of any person to even consider running for the presidency.
Yeah.
The entire media establishment hates me. The entire professional class, political class hates me. Every elected official won't get near me with a 10-foot pole or a 100-foot pole, but I'm going to be president of the United States, right?
I'm under 91 felony indictments.
Yeah.
But I'm going to win.
You're correct.
You
But
know?
you have to have that.
You have
And,
to.
and,
You have
and
to
at
be
those
him.
times, it's a virtue because it allows you to achieve things you could never otherwise achieve by believing in the impossible.
Yes.
The vice of that, most traits are not just a vice or just a virtue. Two sides of the same coin. The vice of that the deep state has figured out is when you come to Trump, you pitch him a magical solution that will solve all problems that make him a hero with no downside.
But that's all foreign policy conflict has ever been to presidents. It's like there is only downside for foreign policy presidents. There's
You've
only
made this
downside.
point repeatedly. And
It has never
someone should
saved
be hammering in Trump's ear over and over again this fact. But instead, he hears the siren song of, hey, you know what? You can get the solution to COVID. You will be the hero that saved millions and millions of lives. All you got to do is rush this vaccine.
Yeah.
You'll be the and he gets emotionally attached to it. His ego gets invested in it. And that's why it took him 2 years, 3 years, 4 years to quit yipping about it. When it was such a disaster.
He wanted that to be a legacy item. I'm the one who saved the population with the vaccine. We went back to normal because of me, because of my warp speed. You see it in the tweet he put out before. I do all these things and I never got credit for it, but that's all right. And that's the one good thing, though. This, like you said, it could be a virtue, it could be a vice. But in this case, it is causing him to hang on and do the right thing. Like his instincts are
over. His instincts are screaming, get a diplomatic resolution. Do not get involved in another Middle Eastern conflict.
This will kill him, Robert.
And he's getting played by Mark Levin. He's getting played by Netanyahu. He's getting played by the neocons who are telling him this will be easy. This will be popular. This will get you all the outcomes that you want. Just like Kellogg has been lying to him about Ukraine. Oh, all you got to be is talk tough on Russia, and Russia will fold. Their economy is about to fall apart.
Boy, he had a turn.
They've lost millions of people on the. How is it Russia's lost so many soldiers, but Ukraine can't find any of them to give them back to them during a body exchange? How is that? How many suckers out there buy that garbage? Kellogg is one of the biggest. He's either the dumbest person on the planet, or he's a total fraud, or something in between.
Something happened to him, man. I mean, he's had like a complete reversal. But again, that's the longer. I have had people who know him for many years tell me that once upon a time, James Clapper was a good guy. He was I know high level people who have known Clapper for many decades. And they said when he got there, he was a Boy Scout. He was a good guy. He was he wanted to do the right thing. He was a servant. He really was. And this town will do something to you and it will change you. I got to tell what makes me nervous. And let me show you this. What makes me nervous is when somebody that I don't trust her on everything because I don't think that we see the world the same way, especially outside of the deep state issues and outside of some of the health issues. I wonder how she could apply this skepticism towards government, toward those things, but not toward so many other things that make Democrats lean on government for things. But Tulsi Gabbard is when you have seen the light with the deep state, the blob, you don't unsee the light. Okay. Right. And Tulsi is somebody, and by the way, a veteran. She has seen the light. And when the director of national intelligence, and so for people who don't know, all of the intelligence, right, information theoretically is supposed to flow to a bottleneck and end the director of national intelligence. So she knows there's no compartmentalizing information there. The DNI, it all gets thrown in. And so she knows more than anybody on a podcast. She knows more, when she is essentially disinvited to key meetings, or would you forget to give her invitation to Camp David? Like, this bothers me. Let me play this. And this is what Tucker is talking about with Steve. And, again, Tucker, you may have a problem with how you may view Tucker's view towards Israel. That's fine. But listen to Steve and listen to his concern, because this is a huge red flag, guys. Huge red flag. Here it is. Here's the clip.
Can't say, but that this could be a predicate to a peace deal. What we're seeing now, he really thinks that and wants that, and the other side is just like, no, a peace deal is immoral.
It's the other side, but the other side also has the apparatus here. This is what happened
in
Ukraine,
the U.S.
when Ukraine attacked.
Yes.
When Ukraine attacked, we still haven't asked Ratcliffe, was the CIA involved? There's zero probability Ukraine could attack that deep into Russia without
chance,
some
Robert.
involvement. Here, the exact same thing. Why was Tulsi Gabbard not invited to the Camp David meeting all day?
You know why.
Why Tulsi Gabbard still, to the American public, has said the last public statement is that the program was not back up and running.
All right, pause it right there real quick, and let's just talk about it.
Who number 2 is for people.
This is really scary, right?
Yeah.
And he just goes, "You know why?" But we all do know why. It's not okay. That's not okay.
Not only that, many of the people that work with her that we know, including Joe Kent, he wasn't there. He signed on to the Iran does not have. There's no imminent risk of Iran having nuclear weapons. He also was not at Camp David. There are some other people who I won't name, but that are aligned with that, who also were not at Camp David. Some of them may be watching as we speak, and so they know they were excluded. So there's a massive effort within the Trump administration. The reason why you've seen Trump all over the place,
watching as well. By the way,
absolutely.
Yeah.
The
entire National Security Council wants a massive strike against Iran, like damn near the entire NSC. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
And this is because this is how insane they are. And the reason why we're going through this data and this history is to show you how will this likely politically play out. One, you can generally bet that they're lying to you about why we're going in. You can generally bet that they're lying to you about the likely consequences of the conflict. If you hear this will be easy, this will be simple, this will be no problem, this won't have any blowback, that should be red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag, because that isn't what's been predicted. That prediction has never come true with America's wars. Even the ones we seem to win easily, like Iraq War I, politically, the blowback was massive over time. Not only because it led to Iraq War II, but also and global destabilization, but also in the U.S., they came to be suspect of the why we went in there, suspect of what happened, skeptical ultimately of what happened. Then you had all the way the veterans were treated, the second version of Agent Orange, whatever it was that caused so many Persian Gulf veterans to get sick. And we have polling data from veterans themselves. And the veterans of these wars, other than World War II, almost uniformly say these were the wrong decision to have gone in. They regret being part of these wars. That's what and that's the information Trump is not being given. I hear somebody in the chat's like, "Oh, Barnes, you'll just, if Trump does the right thing, you'll just say it's his advisors." Just the opposite. Trump has exactly the right instincts on this.
He does, yeah.
That's why they're lying to him and gaslighting him in mass, because they're trying to talk him out of his instincts.
Yeah.
They're trying to talk him away from his instincts.
That's almost always the case, guys. Just so you know that's almost just so you understand, him and his son have very, very good instincts. That's why I have on more than one occasion tried to get his son to run for governor. All right. For in case people that haven't heard it yet, I'll get him. I'll get him one day. But he's because there are two reasons. One is because he communicates like an average person, and some of the Trumps don't. I mean, it's that simple, right? And he's got that like his dad has it. And then secondly is because his instincts are so good, right? One of them being J.D. Vance is going to be a great vice presidential nominee. When everybody else was saying he'll be the worst nominee, and even when the polling was coming in, he's going to be the worst. Now this is the worst nominee in the history of modern polling. And Barnes and I were like, just give it a little time. And so, just give it a little time. He'll prove clutch. And he did, right? Don Jr. knew that. So this is almost always a battle between Trump's instincts and what his son tells him is the right, whenever he offers his take, right? His son almost always has the correct take. And then there's the people that then will try to undo that. Speaking of undoing, Robert was talking about the boomers and stuff before. You may notice the guy on the screen right now isn't on Fox anymore. They're all watching Fox News. He needed to go because of times like this, because they'll spend the entire day pumping boomers up with BS, and then Tucker will unboomer the whole thing in an hour. That is what he did on Fox News, and they can't be there anymore. He can't do that. You brought up Truman before because I think it is important not play the whole clip. I mean, I was going to play more, and I can, but actually, let's do that. But then I want to go back to show people how this thing always flips. Always. So no matter how many people are going in front of the president right now and going, look what people want you to do. This is not how it's going to end. And all of these wars and examples we're showing, right, you guys and whoever may be watching, right, it never ends like that. It always starts like this. And in fact, it's starting at a low point right now. It never ends up being a net positive. These conflicts always end up being a net negative. Even Woodrow Wilson lamented World War I. He had big plans for domestic policy. I mean, maybe to some extent, thank God, guys, he never got a chance to implement it because the war took all his political capital from him. So he had nothing left. He couldn't even get the League of Nations done, right? So he hated it. He had big plans to transform America into a progressive society. And he never got a chance to do any of that because the war sunk him. Right. So it will drain him of all the political capital. You think you're getting deportations? Forget about mass deportations. You're not even going to get criminals deported. That's not even going to, that will stop. You think you walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, Rich? No, he won't be able to, because every bit of your energy throughout the day will be spent on the war. That's what happened to George W. Bush. He started with tax cuts. He had other plans. 9/11 happened. The whole thing went out the window. If he wasn't working on it before, it got nixed.
With Poppy Bush getting involved in that war, sucked up. And what did people think a year later? They blamed the economy on him going to war in Iraq.
Instead of dealing with
this is what has happened over Korean War destroyed the Democratic Party for about a decade. It was nominal Democrats that were in the House. A lot of your conservative Democrats weren't really Democrats by most definitions. It was an Eisenhower majority for a decade, thanks to the Korean War and its failures. Same thing happened with LBJ. 1964 Democratic Party is supposed to dominate for the next 40 years. Yeah. Within 4 years, there'd been a complete political realignment. Number one reason, Vietnam War. That's how unpopular it was. That's how a big failure it was. Then, the Nixon and Eisenhower, Nixon ultimately didn't start new wars. He got us out. Eisenhower didn't start new wars. He got us out of Korea. Ronald Reagan didn't start new wars. He got us out. Donald Trump, first term, didn't start new wars, tried to get us out. So that's what is this. Every politician who gets us into a war is not sustainable over time. You could argue World War II, but we don't know how that would have played out because FDR died. So what we know is that Truman barely held on in 48, running an old school economic populist campaign.
Yeah, it wasn't
lost
based
the House
on
in 46, but the Korean War completely killed him. He was a dead man walking for the last year of his presidency. Yeah. So this is the history: is that World War I, as Richard was mentioning, was so unpopular. It went from a progressive majority to a populist conservative majority for a dozen years. Yep. It took a Great Depression to take away that political.
Read his writings, guys. Read his writings. It was a huge. It wasn't a regret because it's like, he felt like he still had to do it, but he hated that his presidency was consumed by an unpopular world war. He hated it. And I'm going to just play the rest of this, and then we'll move on because I want to show all the graphs that you just went over. Because I mean, just let me get these guys out of the way. But this concerns me a lot because she should have a seat front and center here in this conversation. And there's only one conclusion you can draw as to why she
and now did. We have from Bibi by himself on Fox by Brent Baer that the thing was 12 to 13 months away. It wasn't this weekend. I know. And this is by his own thing. And we also know that it was a decapitation, as we said on Friday. It wasn't just about the nuclear program. It's a decapitation of total leadership. So this is a total regime change, which, by the way, you may have a plan for regime change, is fine. But you got to bring the American people along. Let me go back.
By the way, I said that publicly last week. This is the point of this is regime change. I know everyone involved. I know I'm telling the truth. I have no weird motive here at all. I don't hate Israel. I'm not.
Plus, you know the players, and you went
know
to, and
the
you,
players
and you were, and
personally.
you know the Iraq situation.
This isn't a regime change effort, and why not just say that? But you're a Holocaust denier for saying that. Well, stop. Let's have a rational conversation about what our aims are here. And maybe you can convince me that we need to support a regime change war in Iran. Tell me how that plays out in a country of 90 million people. Have you thought it through? Do you even care? And the answer is no. We have a economic and political and demographic crisis in Europe because of U.S.-backed, Israel-backed
Syria. I mean, we don't have to keep going with that. We can remove that.
Disaster after disaster after disaster.
Start another humanitarian crisis where there are going to be Sunni refugees. I mean, all refugees.
Speaking of which, we have a bunch of graphs on what people in the United States and around the world think about Netanyahu. Because for a lot of the way I've been describing for people, this is an Israel issue right now. This is a Netanyahu issue. This is Netanyahu has been pushed this his whole life and his whole career. As people have correctly pointed out, Netanyahu wasn't in control of Israel when he was lobbying the United States to wage war in Iraq. So the point is, but Netanyahu currently holds power. Now, he's almost lost power 3 times.
BB's thing here.
And every time he's about to lose power in the last 3 years,
magically
some foreign policy or other event takes place. Kind of interesting. He's busy lying on Fox. You can even tell he's almost bashful. So what Bannon's referencing is even Netanyahu acknowledged, okay, well, maybe it was a year away, the nuclear development. That's because he's been saying that since 1991. Oh, probably about a year away. Probably about a year away. All the dude does is lie and try to entrap us into conflicts. But let's pull up some of the graphs.
Here's
just how discredited Netanyahu is, not only around the world, but in the United States of America.
First, Americans, especially Democrats, have little to no confidence in Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. And this is pretty recent, March of 2025. Percentage you say that they have X, right? Whether it's a lot, some, not too much, none at all confidence in Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do the right thing regarding world affairs. I just want to point out again that, as I said in the beginning of the show, you couldn't have given him a month. Now, I mean, this idea that there needed
that's because he knew Trump would get a deal.
That's what bothers me.
That's exactly why they accelerated.
This is what bothers me. Exactly. You kicked Tulsi out of these meetings. All right. So she can't be around to press that point. So Trump can obviously ask the very simple question. Why did they need to do this right now? They couldn't have given me another month, right? They get Tulsi out of the room. They get Joe Kent out of the room, right? And then post the attack, they have Netanyahu admitting on Fox
News. And this doesn't even get into like Dan Caldwell, who was one of the key advisors to Hegseth, that they ran a false campaign about, falsely accusing him of leaks when he had nothing to do with it. Why? Because Caldwell was one of the people who was not gung-ho at just deferring to Netanyahu. And by the way, like one of the people in chat's like, oh, but it's only the homos and Israel lefties that oppose Netanyahu. Wake up, dimwit. Wake up. Look at this data. A majority of young Republicans, other than people that are over 50, have no confidence. Even Republicans that are millennials, that are Zoomers, that are Gen Xers, say they do not have any confidence in Netanyahu. You have 45% not too much or none at all, compared to 32. That's amongst Republican voters under 49. For J.D. Vance, the future of the Republican Party is not to get involved in another Mideast war. They lied to him to get him to volunteer for that war. They lied to Hegseth to get Hegseth to volunteer for that war. Those they know personally, just like Gabbard does, just like Joe Kent does, what a fraud it was to get involved in these dumb Mideastern wars on behalf of Netanyahu.
That's the thing. You kick out the people who actually have the experience. They're the ones who prosecute these wars that are, people that these very people lied about. You kick them out of the room. I mean, man, that's to me, it's like, you don't give these kind of people the benefit of the doubt. You heard Steve say to Tucker, it's because you know the players. These guys, they don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. They don't, right? By the way, here's another graph of that by demographic. All right. Same poll, just different demographics. And you can see Protestants, folks, Protestants, a key, not just white evangelicals. Protestants overall were a huge margin for Trump. And
Exactly.
Look at
The
that.
non-evangelical Protestants don't trust him. The
Yeah.
Catholics don't trust him. Even Jewish voters don't trust him. Of course, Muslim voters don't trust him. The religiously unaffiliated, which, by the way, is increasingly a key swing voter group,
Yeah, under Trump.
overwhelmingly don't
Under
trust him.
Trump. Yeah.
Even white evangelical Protestants only get to 58% trust. This is the most pro-Israeli group in the country. And even they can only get to 58% trust of Netanyahu. And a large part of that 58% is just some trust. That's how little faith the people in America have in Netanyahu. Trump should never defer to Netanyahu and making decisions about Mideastern conflict.
Listen, even my wife, she loves Bibi. All right. And she's super pro-Israel. But she's not pro-preemptive strike when there's nothing to preempt. And it's like she couldn't believe it. And then because Mark Mitchell and I, we did a little clip on a show that he came on Inside the Numbers, and we talked about this, and we both brought up our right track, wrong track trend, which is almost identical to each other. You could like overlay them, and it's incredible how close they are. And yet that's not even it. I mean, that in alone is significant. But what is more significant is that it seems like every time we get close to because the approval rating is like a report card for the president. Mark's right about that. But right track, wrong track is like it's like a generic health gauge for society. And every time we start to get healthy, let me put it that way, right? Because you can't have a unified country or a strong, unified country with wrong track, overwhelmingly 2-1 negative, 2-1 advantage over right direction. Every time we get close or we do see right direction, go positive and take the advantage, something happens. They start a war. There's an economic calamity. Last time it happened, they started the Russia hoax. All right.
Or a sudden pandemic.
Or a pandemic, right? It's just this
war is designed to destroy Trump. They want to trap Trump into this war to destroy him. The neocons want the war for their own purposes, but don't be fooled. They would be thrilled if it also results in the collapse of Trump and Trumpism. That's what Richard's point is. Is it a coincidence that every time Trump gets the country believing we're back on the right track, suddenly a foreign conflict pops up, suddenly a pandemic pops up,
some virus,
something extraordinary pops up? Yeah. How is that? I mean, is it not designed at some point? The pattern, the most logical inference is that it's intended, not coincidental, because it's becoming too coincidental to not be intentional.
Right. By the way, this is what Truman saw when he first, decided about it. Just so, because I did read a comment, Eisenhower was anti-war. All right. The Supreme Allied Commander was anti-war. He just threatened to nuke everybody. You sneeze in my direction and I'm going to vaporize your country. That's what he used to do.
Because if you want to understand how did he stay out of war? Just read his farewell address. Just watch his farewell address. He waited till then to out him, but he said the military-industrial complex is one of the most dangerous combinations of power that's ever existed. Because he was a general, because he was the winner of World War II, and because he knew what they were up to, he could shut the Dulles brothers down. They could do their little coups and whatever else, but he was not putting American troops on the ground, period. He was not putting American lives at risk, period. And that's why he succeeded. That's why Reagan succeeded. That's why Trump first term succeeded, knowing how to do this. But what Netanyahu and the deep state and the neocons want to do is entrap him in another war right as he's surging. Notice how many Democrats are being quiet because they want Trump to get involved in this war, knowing it would blow up his coalition. It would distract him for the next year and a half, and it would likely sink the economy because oil prices would skyrocket. And we would have, imagine if Israel, what does attacking Iran's oil facilities have to do with nuclear weapons? What does all the assassinations of various leaders in Iran have to do with surgical strikes on nuclear weapons? And maybe nothing. Maybe it's just a regime change effort, as Tucker pointed out. He said it before. It's now out there in the open. You see people celebrating. Clay Travis, Ayatollah is going to be taken out tomorrow. I mean, this is what happens when you let 6-year-olds play at war.
Places the Ayatollah, they're dying for something like that to happen. Dying.
Oh, completely. It would rally the Islamic world. It would resurge Islamic terrorism. The Iranian populace would rally behind the flag. They would have their martyr killed by the Americans. We would be stuck in a war there for the next 20 years. Yep. It would be a complete disaster. Disaster for Trump, disaster for MAGA, disaster for populism.
I spoke to a couple of buddies, actually. They're two, and they're in two totally different countries. One is a Muslim dominant country. The other one is a Western country. It's France, I'll just say, and it has a large Muslim population. These are very pro-America Muslims. They are super Trumpy. They love Donald Trump. They're not huge fans of Iran, and they actually think that, of course, while Palestinians, they view them as their brothers in a cause. They think they always go about it the wrong way, and that they always take to violence, and so they're constantly condemning them. Even they are on Iran's side. This is how I really think people should understand, like, that has already rallied the Muslim global community to their aid, because again, it's that word that they remember from Iraq, guys.
Iran just signed a military deal with Russia that they had refused to sign until this conflict.
Yeah,
they didn't want to get too in bed with Russia unless they had to. Now they have. Russia can. If Russia wanted to provide them nuclear weapons, they can do so tomorrow. It's a complete game changer if they decide to get involved. And what do people think that hour-and-a-half conversation Putin had with him on Saturday was about? Yeah. Trump admitted it was about this conflict more than anything else. What do you think Putin was telling him? Oh, we're not going to get involved. Go ahead. Have at it. Or was he saying, you get involved, we get involved?
Screw up.
Good luck to see how that works out.
Yeah.
That's what the nature of that conversation was.
Here is what Truman dealt with. By the way, you brought up the brothers. You brought up the brothers before.
The
Dulles brothers, right? Yeah, Truman had a Secretary of Defense who was super anti-war. All right, all the ufologist people too always say that Forrestal wanted to share what he knew with the American public. Yeah, this guy took a header out of a window. All right, supposedly killed himself. The Secretary of Defense. Yeah, give me a freaking break. I never believed that for a second. I mean, it's just ludicrous to believe that a man with a career like he had during the Second World War, and then becomes the Secretary of Defense under Harry Truman, suddenly loses his mind, right? And then gets suicidal ideations and takes a dive out of a fourth or fifth story window, right? But here is Gallup, October 14th through 19th, 1951. A United States senator says that the Korean War is an utterly useless war. Do you agree or disagree with this? 56%. Here's another one. This is from the National Opinion Research Center, right? From November 1954. As things stand now, do you feel that the war in Korea was worth fighting or not? Only 39% said it was worth fighting. 51% said it was not worth fighting. That's not even that bad of a margin. And this war crippled Truman, crippled him. And, you had Eisenhower, who was like the Richard Nixon of his day. Speaking of which, here's Vietnam. All right. Did the U.S.
And
make
people forget that because of the anti-war movement had a bunch of hippie commies in it. People forget that your average working class American was both anti-war and anti-hippie, right? Yep. They're like Cartman, stinking hippies, but they were also anti-war. And that turn changed by February of 1968, very early in this conflict. And it stayed unpopular all the way through. It was never popular. Nixon ultimately got us out. I think he could have got us out a lot sooner than he did. Yeah. He too thought you could just bomb your way into success. Like I'm hearing now, people say, "Oh, it'll be easy. We'll get regime change just by bombing, and it'll lead to this peaceful, flourishing of America-loving Iranians. The Shah will become. They'll probably welcome the Shah back, and MI6 can have all the cocktails they want, and Lindsey Graham can have all the Zelensky look-alike prostitutes he can find. But the reality of what this shows you is this Vietnam War was never popular with working class voters. Never. People always focused on George Wallace's aggressive bomb, bomb, bomb. What he also said is, if we can't win, we should get the hell out right away, which has always been Trump's construct. That's why they're lying to him about the popularity of the war. They're lying to him about the need for the war. They're lying to him about what will happen if he goes to the war, if he gets involved and engaged in the war. This is what will happen. He'll have his presidency collapse, his coalition fall apart, his economy tank, and it'll be the end of Trump's second term. They will have killed it in its crib, using war to do so, because that's what's always happened with these
which they tried to do the first administration with Syria. Again, they wanted this to take away from all of the immigration policy, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, et cetera, et cetera. They tried this. These people that talk about air power, again, this is why you should join Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. And with the exception of Father's Day, we do a book club almost every week. We didn't for Father's Day, Mother's Day, obviously, stuff like that. But we're reading now Nations and Identities, which is Vincent Pecora, which is good stuff. But before that, we read a bunch of books. One of them was John Mearsheimer and the Tragedy of Great Power Politics. You cannot bomb your way to regime change. Anytime you hear people argue that you can use air power to affect your outcome, which is what is important here, because you have to lay out what your goals are. And they're not admitting it. The goal is regime change, right? You can't use that. He looks at all these examples in the Tragedy of Great Power Politics. Slobodan Milosevic is the one, Bosnia. They always use this example. People are like, look, we were able to do it in Bosnia. That is not why he capitulated after a while. It was not the airstrikes. It was the threat of ground invasion from NATO. And that is when he eventually pulled the plug. He would have been able to eat up the airstrikes, Robert, forever. Like, these guys have avoided. There's no example. There's no empirical example on the historical record that you can point to and say that air power alone was able to get, was able to achieve your policy objective. Air power is not sufficient. It's not. And by the way, they don't just blindly drop the bombs, guys. All right. There are people down there painting targets.
Peter points it out in the chat. The easy targets are the moderates. The people who replace them are the extremists. This is what has always happened in the Middle East. Yep. You will get people like, oh, you couldn't get more hardcore than the mullahs. Yes, you could. Yeah, absolutely. If the Ayatollah died, his fatwa that said no more nuclear program in 2003 in Iran is immediately vacated. Now there's no religious restraint whatsoever on the Iranian government going full bore at developing nuclear weapons. They now have a full alliance and allegiance with Russia, thanks to Iran's strike. So far, Iran's strike has achieved very little good and put a lot of bad things into motion, including, you can listen to Israeli commentators who said they didn't think Iran's weapons would reach them. They didn't think they would be facing bombs every night. They're hiding out in shelters night after night after night. That big bill in Israel, they have a strict censorship policy. So they try to prohibit anybody from broadcasting anything that's happening within the country during the war, unless it's strictly controlled. But because of the modern social media age, you got too many normies with a cell phone who can film it and broadcast it to the world. And so that's the risk that's taking place, is that this conflict they lied to us already about why we're in it, why they want Trump to get much further involved. It's one thing to just be there defending Israel. That's something that will have political blowback, but a very marginal political blowback. It's if we get directly involved. They want the U.S. to be the ones to, it's not a coincidence. It's likely Trump who leaked that he told Israel, do not kill the Ayatollah.
Qassam. Oh, absolutely. You mean the Reuters article? Absolutely.
Yes. That's
Trump was like, you better get that in the wire right effing now. That is 100% Donald Trump. And there's no doubt about it. You need to tell the American public that I put the brakes on this stupid shit. That was Donald Trump. I just want to read this real quick. This is Mearsheimer, a paper, and it's a paper that he would later develop into a larger, this is a thesis, right? But it's a paper he would later develop into a very popular book, okay? But here is what he writes about airstrikes and the use of air power to, for various, but to basically get the policy objective here, which according to them at the time was to come to a peaceful solution when it was bullshit. It was regime change anyway. I mean, that was the point. But here's what he writes. I'm just going to read this paragraph and hopefully the thunder doesn't overtalk me here. Historical evidence indicates that such a use of air power can be an effective compellant in only a very limited circumstance. In peacekeeping operations, airstrikes are inappropriate, since they violate the impartiality required of the peacekeeping force, leading to force escalation on both sides and a consequent failure of the peacekeeping mission. If hostilities are ongoing with no truce to observe, peacekeeping is not possible. In other words, it's pointless to even argue this in this instant anyway. If hostilities are ongoing with no truce to observe, peacekeeping is not possible. These situations require peacekeeping operations to restore at least a temporary peace. Contrary to the argument put forth by the limited objectives school, which is that these people we're talking about right now, though previous peacekeeping and peacemaking situations show that gradual force escalation is usually not effective in compelling a determined enemy. Peacekeeping is thus a combat operation, in most cases requiring joint employment of forces. Applying these conclusions to the specific conditions, in this case, Yugoslavia, shows that limited airstrikes alone will probably not compel a peace between the Serbs, the Croats, and the Bosnians. And by the way, he was right. I'm reading this. He wrote this before. He was right. Okay. The purpose here is not to provide a detailed analysis of the situation in Yugoslavia and propose specific courses of action, but rather to show what circumstances in Yugoslavia diminish the coercive value of limited airstrikes. In other words, back then he was arguing this is nonsense. This policy isn't even appropriate for this situation. But even if it was, and you were being earnest with your objective, it would not work. And he goes and lays out why that is the case. He was right. They would go on to use airstrikes every single day for how many days? It didn't work. What did end up working is when Bill Clinton eventually gave the signal that he was okay with a ground invasion from NATO. Then he pulled the plug and then he said, okay, I'm done. Mesh Shimers would go on to review everything he had said before that and then argue why he was right and put it all into a nice little neat book. It becomes a little section in that book on a greater thesis, and you should read it because it's called The Tragedy of Great Power Politics, and it's the thesis is the antithesis to everything you hear on cable news. Everything you hear from these stupid neocons and neoliberals, everything you hear from the war horse, they're not even right. So even if their prescription was the moral prescription. All right, so this is how I would answer some of you who were saying like, well, it's the moral thing to do is to back Israel. Even if it was, it's not the right prescription. And if you did it and with just complete disregard for the evidence, you're just going to make it worse. That's the point he's arguing. You will just lead to escalation.
It may be a good idea to treat the cancer. It's probably not a good idea to treat the cancer by shooting the person in the head. That might treat the cancer. It doesn't work. That's what these regime change wars do in the Middle East, and in the Islamic Muslim world writ large. I was arguing with Mark Robert, who has a fun show people can watch. What's Up with Lord Buckley. It's a new YouTube channel.
I'm going on it.
Yeah, Viva's going to be on it. Richard's going to be on it. I'm going to be on it. But
better get my boy don't worry on there.
Yeah, he was like, "Don't worry. Wouldn't regime change be good?" And I was like, "In what world has that worked out? Replacing Gaddafi made America less safe. Replacing Saddam Hussein made America less safe. Trying to replace the Taliban with the Taliban made America less safe. Yeah. Taking out Bashar Assad in Syria has made America less safe. We're not safer because of these regime change wars. We are less safe. Not to mention the trillions of dollars lost on these foolish conflicts. And not to mention the number of Americans dead, disabled, or drug addicted thanks to these stupid wars. So it's when you poll the veterans who served in these wars say these wars were a mistake. So the message to Trump is clear. The working class, minority, millennial, Zoomer vote that is the key independent vote, and the members of Congress and the Senate and others thinking about running. Well, Richard and I were here in March of 2022 telling people Ukraine war will not be popular with the United States over time. Americans will come to begrudge the fact that their money is being wasted in that stupid war. Americans will become increasingly concerned it could escalate with a conflict with Russia. We were the only ones saying it. A bunch of people were saying, no, jump on board. It'll be great. COVID, the same. We were saying, no, oppose the COVID policies. Don't join the COVID policies. Steve Bannon at the time was saying join the COVID policies. Tucker Carlson at the time was we were the only ones out there saying it. We said politically it'll be a disaster for you to join Anthony Fauci. Divorce yourself from Anthony Fauci, attack Anthony Fauci, and that will be a political path to progress. A certain man named Robert Kennedy took that advice to heart, and now he's Secretary of Health and Human Services. By contrast, Trump went along with it for a month or two, and it helped sink his 2020 presidential campaign. It greenlit the ability of mass mail-in voting. So, and what we said with Ukraine, J.D. Vance took our advice. I talked to him. You talked to him. He said, okay, I'm going to come out against this. Guess what? He went from 4th to 1st in the Ohio Republican primary, then won the general election, and is now vice president of the United States, and is 3 years away from being president of the United States. As long as he can help make sure President Trump doesn't get in the trap of another war in the Middle East, especially, and for Netanyahu in particular.
In order to do that, he must win at least some of the Rust Belt states that Donald Trump has been exclusively able to win as a Republican. And here we showed one where, who did you think would implement a foreign policy that puts America first? Obviously, they had Trump ahead of Harris. There's a couple others in that poll that we should put up. Okay,
because let's
this
go to the Midwest poll.
Better be for JD Vance. You better listen, but Mr. Vice President, right now. Here is: do you favor or oppose sending? It escalates here, guys. So bear with me. Do you favor or oppose the U.S. sending money and weapons to Israel? Okay, and this is just the Midwest states.
It's net negative in the Midwest. It's net negative. Just to send them money. Just to send them weapons. Not to mention getting involved and putting our ships in harm's way, putting our pilots in harm's way by defending them. Least of all, actually attacking, joining Israel to fight Israel's war against Iran. Merely to just sending money and weapons was unpopular all in 2024 in the Midwest, in the key swing states of Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. So imagine what a war would look like in the public opinion with those votes.
Well, as a matter of fact, and I would have just said my only criticism of this poll is that I would have split this question up. U.S. sending money and U.S. sending weapons. Those are really two totally different things.
Yep.
And
money would have more support than weapons.
Money would have more support. I think, exactly. And then it gets to the crux of the situation we're finding ourselves in right now. Okay. Would you support the U.S. entering the war if a war broke out between Israel and Iran?
No, Lee Smith told me that's a 75% yes, Richard. What does the poll actually show?
Brother, 53% say no. Only 21%.
21%.
This is the
21%. This is one of the most unpopular positions in the country.
Yep. That's the collective Big Five.
And it's framed right. Would you support the U.S. entering the war if a war broke out between Israel and Iran? That's exactly where we are right now. Overwhelmingly, it was no, and no. So don't be lied to, Vice President Vance. Don't be lied to, President Trump, and the other people that may be watching it live on the show. This is an extremely unpopular idea.
And in 28, folks, the Democratic president, if they do this, the Democratic president will position themselves as the anti-war peacemaker. They'll be more pro-Palestinian than pro-Israel, but it will look okay because they'll say that Israel was the aggressor here. They're the ones who caused the problem. So we're just looking out for the little guy. It's going to play in Saginaw, Michigan. It's going to play in Monroe, Michigan. It's going to play in Macomb, Michigan. It's going to play in Northampton, Pennsylvania. It's going to play in Pike County, Pennsylvania. It's going to play in Erie County, Pennsylvania. All of these areas where Trump runs ahead of these schmucks already. And they wonder why Mike Rogers, but I won Hispanics by like 1 point. Where he really ran behind was in the working class, white and non-white. All right. He just didn't do as well as Trump with black voters who feel like they've been orphaned from the Democratic Party. They wanted somebody to think about them first, not Ukraine, not print more money, cause inflation to go up, and then send that money over to a foreign country. They wanted someone to take care of them. And by the way, and also working whites, of course, that voted for Barack Obama, not once, but twice, overwhelmingly, and now vote for Donald Trump. But they'll vote for a Democrat over Mike Rogers, let's say Mike Rogers was elected to the U.S. Senate, right, from Michigan. Let's say Trump was able to drag him over the finish line and Mike Rogers eked himself out a little bit of a win. Do you or do you not think that a fictional now, even though he's running again, this clown, he didn't win when Trump was on the ballot, but he's going to run again, and he's going to win Michigan this time, even though it's a midterm. Do you or do you not think that Mike Rogers, Mr. Deep State himself, would be out there on a Sunday show right now saying that Trump should absolutely join this war and help Israel put this down, right? So, of course he would have, and that's why he lost the election, guys. That's why he lost the election. It's this general feeling that there are still a bunch of Republicans. John Fetterman would probably be a Republican right now if there wasn't still the Mitch McConnell wing in the U.S. Senate who are dying to get into this war. And I'm not going to get into AIPAC and all that. I don't think one political action committee, guys, controls the world. Like, some of these people like Glenn Greenwald, think. By the way, what the hell happened? Listen, pause, stop the phone. I have to ask you about this. WTF, Glenn. All right. What's up with the hand licking and the bib wearing? What the fuck was that, Robert? Listen, I don't like personal stuff to be leaked. I got my own problems. You know what I mean? But oh Lord, what did you make of that, by the way? Because he's done such a good job on so many topics. And then it's like, how do you let yourself get recorded doing that? I guess that's the only thing that bothers me. I don't really care. Do what you want, you deviant, in your own time. I'm a freak myself. But don't let anybody freaking record you doing it. Because then guess what? And it probably was the Israelis who leaked that tape. It probably was.
Well, especially given the timing now that all of this.
Now look at the timing. Yeah, I mean, if it was suspect before, bro, it's like obvious.
And let's be honest, we all know why the Epstein files haven't been released, because it implicates Israel. It's that simple. That's why they're sitting on it. That's why they're hiding it. That's why Kash Patel can't keep a consistent story interview to interview. That's why Pam Bondi can't keep a consistent story interview to interview. That's why Dan Bongino can't keep a consistent story interviewed by interview. It's indirectly what Elon was really referencing. Is that Israel is implicated by it, so that's why we're hiding it.
I told people, Robert, you're going to die on this cross. This thing can't be reformed. It's not a reformable institution. You should have just gone with your original, you're all talking big when you're all a bunch of podcasters. You know what I mean? Like Dan Bongino talked a lot of shit, bro, when he was in Rumble. All right. But now he's like, look at him, Mr. Company Man, look, guys, I'm sorry if you like Dan. This is where I'm at with this guy. He's like so many others I know. Never trust a company guy. They're always going to be a company guy. Secret Service, whatever it may be. They are institutionals. That's what they are.
Well, so like a friend of mine used to put it, you cut them and they still bleed government blue.
Damn right. Damn right. That's why I'm always so, if I did or do, run for an office, I'm not going to be sitting there touting my veteran bona fides. First of all, I can't stand it. It's cringe to me. It's cringe to me, Robert. It is. It's like, I don't really care. You got, I just don't care.
That's the other thing we should highlight in all this. So we've emphasized this war will turn unpopular no matter what you see early on, because that has consistently been the case with similar wars for the last better part of a century in America.
Sure.
Second, that this precise question, when polled accurately, dating back to 2009 and including last year in swing states, overwhelmingly Americans do not support getting involved in a war between Israel and Iran directly.
Yeah.
The swing voter groups, working class minorities, millennials, and Zoomers, disproportionately don't want us involved. You don't have to take my word for it. You can just tune into Salty Cracker and get any random rant that he'll go on at any time in his show about how this ain't our war, ain't our war, ain't our war, ain't our war. And then we've mentioned the economic fallout that could completely destroy Trump, the political fallout that could completely destroy Trump. But we haven't even mentioned the other risks of all of this, which is, what message do we send when we start taking all of our aircraft carriers and other key military personnel away from Taiwan and send it to Israel? What message are we sending, China? What might China do, given its own internal severe domestic, political, and economic problems? Are we not inviting another potential war on the global front? This is what key people in the Trump administration have been arguing. It's, if you want to know whether somebody's legit, see how much Congress tried to stop them from getting appointed.
Yeah.
Like Robert Kennedy, like Tulsi Gabbard, like Eldridge, like other
Never
people.
fails.
Yep. That's like Joe Kent. These are the people that are going to give you honest information, Mr. President, rather than the false information, the siren songs you might want to hear, and the false intel the neocons love to spin, and the lies Netanyahu loves to tell. I mean, we started off by highlighting to you that these exact same lies were made by Netanyahu about Iraq in 2002. Exact same lies about imminent risk of weapons of mass destruction, and exact same lies about what the consequence of a conflict would be that would lead to a flourishing of peace and democracy throughout the Middle East. One of the worst, and remember, these are my words, he said he guaranteed it. Guaranteed it. That's what that's why people are like, oh, they don't trust Netanyahu because of God. They don't trust Netanyahu because he has a 25-year history of lying. He's one of the biggest morons on the planet when it comes to tactical advice. So our advice to President Trump, don't take the bait. Stick with your instincts. Stick with your base. Keep America out of war. America first, not Israel first.
There it is. There it is. I just want to show one more graph before we go, because it is in the Middle East, and I really cannot stress to people enough why Republicans can't win these states, guys, and Donald Trump can. He has a different approach, and people believe it. So what I would worry the most about if I was Trump himself, not his advisors, because I don't think his advisors give two shits what happens to Trump in the long run or his movement, is that something like this could cause you to lose all of that, right? And right now, you need to remain what you say you are, and what Robert and I both know you are, right? But pressure is overwhelming. But Republicans can't, they are not capable of making this image makeover on their own, because look at them. Look at Ukraine. Look at they can't do it. So Trump is their only hope. And if Trump abandons what he believes in and what he stands for now, it's all over. It's all over. Look at this. Even if, oh no, wait, that's wrong. My bad. Here we go. If the United States devoted more money, soldiers, and resources to the conflicts in the Middle East, do you think the United States could fix the problems happening there? Right? 81% in the Midwest, the Big Five, that's poll the Big Five. 81% said no. Only 19% said yes. The reason why they trust Trump to do this is because he comes at it from this very unconventional way of doing things, and they know that, and he's had success before. If he does decide to then just abandon all that and devote more money, more soldiers, right, and start acting like Lindsey Graham, by the way, who also is another huge problem, but that's another story. That's for another show. He will look like a fraud. I'm not trying to, there's no nice way to attack. You can't tip the hands around what you're trying to say here, like what I'm trying to say. You will make yourself look like a fraud. And once you do that, you're not getting them back. You're cooked. They're gone. They're like, damn it, he was just like everybody else. He didn't care about me more after all.
I mean, Woodrow Wilson won the 1916 election promising to keep America out of war.
Yeah.
The fact that he got us into that war destroyed the Democratic Party for more than a decade. President Trump understands this instinctively. He just has to act on it. Don't trust Netanyahu. Don't trust Mark Levin. Don't trust the neocons. Don't trust the war whores. Do not get in bed with Netanyahu with another dumb Mideastern war. Act on your instincts. Keep America safe by keeping America first. Keep America safe by keeping America prosperous. Keep America first by keeping our boys here at home working in factories, not overseas, dying for globalist wars.
Yeah, be desecrated on the way home. All right, folks. It's 3:58. We can go ahead and wrap it up here. But Robert, good stuff. I'm hoping people were listening because, and I mean really listening. I know it's outrageous. Like, and if you take one moral side, like one position based on morality or something like that, it's hard to stomach and hear some to get dose of reality. Mesh Shimers actually said it best. Americans are like somewhat idealistic when it comes to this. They want to believe in the best of everyone, and they want to see the world in a right versus wrong, a good versus bad. But unfortunately, that's not how you can conduct statecraft. It's just not. Otherwise, you end up in dumbass wars like Iraq, right? So what? Saddam Hussein was a bad guy. Saddam Hussein right now, the Middle East, if you would have left Saddam Hussein alone, we'd have our peace dividend. We'd have $10 trillion back at least, right? At least. More probably, because the government would never have been able to do what it's doing now. Like that they used war, the beating of war drums to spend money like they had never spent it before. They missed an economic crisis because they were so focused on a war. They had no other capital to spend on preventing an economic crisis that devastated the country and devastated the Republican Party, by the way. And then they're just talking about repeating those mistakes now. And the truth is, you got to learn to see the world the way that it is. There really aren't any good guys, including us. It's only about what's best for you and what's best for your kids and your children, all of our children, and you can't fix every problem all over the world. You can't. Let Trump cook and do his thing, and let Trump try to find a diplomatic solution. We should frankly be pretty angry that they did what they did, because they basically stuck their thumb in Trump's eye and said, you know what? No, we're going to do this our way. We want more. And that's effed up, guys. That's totally effed up. You got a baby brother in the relationship, and your baby brother just starts going rogue and then expects you to go around the court and kick everyone's ass anyway, even though they were wrong. Come on, guys. Give me a break. They didn't do anything to them yet. So.
And the short summation is
nothing, but,
betting on Barnes and betting on Baris has not got you in the wrong place yet. More often than not, you come on the upside. Betting on Fox News and betting on Netanyahu has been a consistent disaster and debacle. So make the right choice, the smart choice, the intelligent choice, the choice that you know in your heart is right. President Trump, Vice President Vance, Secretary Hegseth, Director Gabbard, and others in the White House, some of whom I know are watching as we speak. You're on the right. Those that are you're on the right side by keeping us out of this war. You're protecting the president and protecting America and protecting the world by doing so. Keep staying on the right side, and we'll all end up on the right side in the end.
Amen, brother. All right, where can people find you, Robert?
If you want to have accurate polling about what will happen if Trump confronts the courts, but with accurate polling that really tests it and teases it out in the real world. What would happen, whatever happens in this conflict? What is the public opinion reaction? All of that. Support the Public Polling Project because it's fully transparent. There is no secret donors that everybody's relying on. There's no Miriam Adelson to create a fake poll on Israel.
That's coming.
That's definitely coming from Fox News. If you want accurate information about that and any other public opinion topic that influences and shapes the debate, support the Public Polling Project to continue to make it possible. As always, all of my content you can find at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. If you want, I'll be putting up predictions as to what I think is going to happen, because there's a bunch of odds now in the prediction markets. I'm not quite sure how I feel about prediction markets about whether someone's going to die or not. That's a little weird, but all those different markets, the ones that I find utility to, will provide at sportspicks.locals.com. But everybody stay active, stay involved, stay informed, stay Don't think your opinion doesn't matter. Don't resign yourself to any conflict, even if it seems inevitable. Your voice matters. They don't lie to you because your voice doesn't matter. They don't censor you because your voice doesn't matter. Your voice does matter. Get out there and speak it to every congressman, every state representative, every political person, everybody in the court of public opinion that you can, to say no to this war, America first, end of story.
They also told you Amy Coney Barrett was a great choice for the U.S. Supreme Court.
We were the only ones.
You notice it's like literally the same people. Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro.
Yes.
It's all the same people. She turned out to be an absolute catastrophe. Gee, America's got a problem. They're plagued with overly educated, fanatical white women. I can't imagine why putting one on the highest bench in the highest court in the land would have been a problem over a woman, a Hispanic woman, who knows full well the horrors of leftism and communism. I mean, that was another loser pick. I mean, that was something, but at least that's gone in the right direction. The Federalist Society is on the outs, and it's about time. All right, Robert, as always, brother, good stuff. Good stuff. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon. All right, everybody, go check them out. vivabarnes.locals.com, vivabarnes.locals.com, but sportspicks.locals.com. It's all in the link to the sportspicks.locals.com. Everything is in the link in the description below. I didn't get through it, but I will get through it in the shows later in the week. Check out 1775, what we got for 1775 this week. Great coffee. Amazing. And send me, as always, your take on that. We love this coffee. We love hearing from you and what you think. What's your favorite blend? The mushroom. Check out the mushroom. Be bold. Be brave. Get the mushroom. All right. With that in mind, I'm out. Thanks also to Robert for giving a shout out to the Public Polling Project. Definitely. That's also in the link as well. All right, guys. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you soon. All the best.